Hey everybody, it is Ed. Alright, I'm going to try and keep this video as focused as I possibly can because going into my thinking process of making this video, it was going to be about a bunch of different things, but I'm actually going to try and keep it specific to this one topic, but it kind of expands. So let me explain. For those of you who are not familiar with my channel, my mother and father ran a fan club, or they've co-founded a fan club called the King's Court of New York City back in 1972 when they met two other people and a bunch of other people, and they formed this fan club called the King's Court. Became quite successful. Started about 1973. My parents were involved with the fan club until 1975, and the fan club continued, and my parents were always still fans, but my parents were no longer part of the fan club in any capacity to run or anything like that. That's a story for another time. Okay, but now during their tenure in the fan club and being a huge fan and following Elvis all around, they had the pleasure of meeting Elvis. They had the pleasure of meeting people in Elvis's crew, and among one of those people that they got to meet and remain friendly with and stay friends with until he unfortunately passed away last year was Mr. Ed Bonja. Mr. Ed Bonja was best known as a photographer for Elvis Presley, and many of his photographs have been seen on album covers, 45 singles, mostly from 1971 and up, I believe, possibly 72. But regardless, and Ed Bonja had taken the picture of my parents with Elvis when they presented him the plaque in Vegas, which I've shown on my channel before. And back in 1994, they had an auction at, what is it, Guernsey's auction, okay? And what I'm holding here is a list of items that Ed Bonja had put up for auction. And among those, if you could see the first thing, it says audio cassette tape of Elvis Presley Rehearsal. I'm reading this backwards, sorry. Elvis Presley Rehearsal with Elvis singing the 12th of Never. And as you can see, there was a estimated price of, what is that, 200,000, 220. I can't read it, guys, I'm sorry. It's backwards and it's small from where I'm sitting. All right, now obviously Ed's information is up top, but it's not like I'm doxing him at this point because unfortunately Ed is no longer with us, and this is from 1994 anyway. All right, but so we had the audio cassette, and that went up for auction, and it had a $100,000 reserve on it. All right, and just so you can see, actually here on the bottom we have Ed's signature with a date of November 30th, 1994. Okay, this is a copy. That's why there's a little blue mark, because this is actually a copy of the original. Here's the original. Okay, without any mark. All right, but regardless, so why am I showing this? Well, because back in 1994, when Ed did this auction, Ed stayed with my family. And I always reference this website. I love this website, elvisnews.com. And here they have an email interview with Ed Bonja. And this was from, I believe it was April 2000 of the year 2000. Okay. So, no, I'm sorry, August. It says August 2000, if you can see that. Hopefully it's not too blurry. All right, but again, this is Elvis News. Now, I'm not going to read the entire interview because it is lengthy. All right, but you can see at the time they're advertising Ed's book, which I happen to have right here, okay? But there is one specific question in here that I want to read and give you what his response is, because it's pretty much proves what I'm about to tell you. All right, so they ask him questions, so they number each question, and then he gives his response. So again, this was all done by email. So question number 6 was, do you still have contact with other people from, quote, the King's Court, unquote? And Ed's response was, okay, actually, you know what? Let me see if I can put it so you can even read it. It's question number 6. Forgive the broken screen. I don't know if you can read it. All right, but here it says his response was, I still have contact with Richard and Angela Hess from the King's Court. We send emails back and forth, talk by telephone once in a while. When I was in New York a few years ago for the Guernsey Rock and Roll auction, I stayed with Richie and Angela. They're still very good friends of mine and have been since I first met them during the early 70s. This is another common example of how people become lifelong friends through Elvis. And then the editor wrote in parentheses, editor, although we meant the question more in general, the answer is indeed a good example, so we decided to keep it in this way. How funny is that? So essentially, when they were asking the question, do you still have contact with other people from the King's Court, I guess they meant in general. They didn't necessarily mean the fan club, you know, because maybe the person who did this interview wasn't even aware of the King's Court fan club. So it's funny that Ed went right to my parents and discussed them and also mentioned how he stayed with us. All right, so again, that's just to give you the backstory. So now why am I giving you this backstory? Well, this cassette that I'm talking about, we had at our house. Ed had brought it. And when he brought it, he let us make copies. So I basically, on this tape, have a second generation, because he had the first generation tape. So I have a second generation tape of not only, the original Rehearsal, unedited, not unedited, but untouched, unmastered, nothing, not enhanced, just the original tape. But then he also had a different mix that was made to basically, I guess, give an example of what could be done with the vocal. So I have the original unmastered version on here, second generation, because it was copied directly from Ed's tape, and then that other version that he had made. Now, I've searched the YouTube, and I have found that this second version is out there, this, version that's on this tape. So I thought I had something special and was going to play it for you, but I'm not going to do that this video, but maybe the next one. So that's that. And then, of course, when Ed did finally sell it, I'll tell a little bit about that story. It was sold to Sony Music, of course. It did not sell at auction. It was a very disappointing day for Ed and us, because it was my father, myself, and Ed Bonja at the auction. And I remember being really excited for him. The tape was not the only thing I had in my hand. There were other things that I'm going to show in a different video, because like I said, I want to stay focused on this tape and this song. But it was really great, and I wish I had the money at the time, because had I had the money at the time, not that I would have bought this tape, I wouldn't, because I had a copy. There's no reason for me to buy it, but what do you call it? He had the mock-up for the Fool album and the mock-up for Standing Room Only, so I got to hold those. I mean, they were in frames, but I got to see them in person and hold them, and they were really cool, and I wish I had bought them, but I didn't. Anyway, moving on. So the 12th of Never was sold to Sony because it did not sell at auction. And Ed met with Ernst, and, Ernst basically offered, I guess, the standard offer, if you will, and Ed really had no choice but to accept what they offered him, because there was nothing that he could legally do with the tape himself. He wouldn't be able to release it, so Ed, unfortunately, was between a rock and a hard place. And if I remember correctly, I believe he got $10,000 for that tape, and that was it. So I think that was unfortunately a huge disappointment for him. So that made its way to this box set, and where is it? Boom, I'm showing you the wrong side, right there, on disc 5. The 12th of Never Rehearsal, never released at that time. This box set says it was pressed in, it should be 95, and it is 95, all right? I don't remember the exact month, but I remember the process of Ed going through to sell this tape, and then for Sony to do what they were going to do with it. So I guess this was a CD single. I don't know if this is a promo. Could possibly be a promo. I'm not exactly sure. Let's see. I don't know. It's got a nice little, did a good job with the CD. Nice little picture and whatnot of the box set cover. Informal recording, all that good stuff. All right, and then they had something called the Out of the Box Sampler, which was basically a sampler CD for the box set. And the 12th of Never was also included on this. This one had, I think, the most assortment of songs out of all three of the Out of the Box samplers, because they did one for the 50s and one for the 60s as well. But I think this one had the most selections on it. So there you have that. So show this real quick too. Here's just a copy of a picture of my father with Ed. This is from 1976. And yeah, so this is my copy from the original tape of Ed's version of the 12th of Never Rehearsal. So it sounds pretty good. I mean, again, it's before it was mastered, and then of course following it. I think I recorded it a couple of times, so each song it goes from one to the next, one to the next, one to the next. I don't know why I did it that way. I guess just to make sure I had a good copy. I don't know. This was back in 1994, so it's amazing. It's half my life ago already. And unfortunately, Ed is no longer with us. But yeah, Ed, I want to thank you for the good times and the good memories and everything else that you've given the family, you know, with your friendship and everything else. So I guess in a way, this is a tribute to you. And another interesting story about that day at the auction was I met Conan O'Brien briefly. He was there. He's a big Elvis fan. I think he did a segment on his show, you know, that had something to do with him being at the auction. There was like a segment where they brought up a huge facsimile, like paper mache head of Conan O'Brien, you know, like as a joke to put it up for auction. And he was the only one who was bidding on it or something like that. If I remember correctly, I think that's how it went. I'm not exactly sure. But I do remember trying to go and introduce myself to him, to try and introduce him to Ed Bonja, but he kind of like blew me off. He's like, oh, well, yeah, well, we need to talk to my agent about, you know, blah, blah. So I was like, all right, you know, thank you, nice to meet you, have a great day, type of thing, and just like walked away in total, like, why'd I even bother? But hey, you know, you never know unless you try. So I think that's pretty much it with this. So the 12th of Never, released by Sony in 1995, finally on a box set. Had it on this cassette prior to that. Ed stayed with the family. Ed was a great guy, and I really don't know what more I can say. I would love to play it for you, and you know what, I'll do that in my next video. And there's still a lot of other videos I want to do. I want to talk about my other tapes that my mother recorded and the process of what's happening with them right now. But we'll do that probably next. All right. I appreciate everybody watching. Please leave a comment if you'd like, and as always, be good to yourselves and be good to each other. Take care.